The woman at the end of the cul-de-sac had her palms flat against the glass every single morning watching. I was living in a rental property on Primrose Lane. It was one of those Midwest developments where everything looked a little too perfect. White siding, black shutters, and grass so green it looked like it had been spray painted on. I was there on a short-term contract, which meant I spent most of my day working on street-level fiber hubs. That's how I noticed the timing. Every morning at exactly 7:58 a.m., she'd be there, just standing at her front window. She wasn't looking at a phone or a book, she was just staring at the empty street. Then, at exactly 7:59, every front door on the block would click open. It happened at the exact same second. 20 doors swinging wide open, 20 neighbors stepping out in unison. They'd all give this stiff, identical wave toward the end of the street and get into their cars. No one talked, no one dropped their keys. It was super weird, but I figured it was some localized suburban culture I didn't get. Then I tried to talk to them. I waved at a guy mowing his lawn. He stopped. He didn't look at me right away. He waited exactly 2 seconds, then turned his head with a smile that looked like it hurt. "It's a beautiful day to be a neighbor, isn't it?" he said. I tried to ask him about the local hardware store. He just stared. His eyes were wide and glassy. "It's a beautiful day to be a neighbor, isn't it?" He said it with the exact same inflection as before. Same pitch, same rhythm. I backed away and he went right back to mowing, like I had never been there. Things peaked on my fourth morning. I couldn't find my blue work vest, so I threw on an old red rain jacket and walked to the local diner for a coffee before my shift. The bell above the door rang. The entire room froze. 30 people stopped mid-motion. One guy had a fork halfway in his mouth. A woman was leaning over to pick up a napkin. They didn't just go quiet, they stopped moving entirely. The waitress was at the counter pouring a pot of coffee into a mug. She didn't stop. The coffee filled the cup, overflowed, and started splashing onto the table. It ran off the edge and hit the floor into a steady stream. She didn't flinch. She wasn't even looking at the mess. She was staring directly at my red sleeve. None of them were blinking. The only sound in the whole building was the hiss of that hot coffee hitting the floor tiles. I didn't order. I just backed out the door and ran to my truck. That night, I stayed in my room with the lights off. Around 2 a.m., I heard a thin, metallic scrape. I looked down and saw a white slip of paper sliding under my door. I picked it up. There was no letterhead, just one typed sentence. "You are wearing the wrong color. We followed the Monday schedule here. Do not let it happen again." I didn't pack everything. I just grabbed my keys and drove. I didn't turn my headlights on until I was 3 miles past the town limits. I looked the town up later. The houses are still there, the diner is still there, but the reviews for the diner all say the same thing. The staff is polite, they know exactly what you need. I still have that red jacket, but I haven't worn it since. Sometimes, when I'm in a crowd and I hear a group of people laugh or move at the same time, I get this cold shiver down my spine. The guard at the gate didn't have a name tag. That should have been the first sign. Last October, I took a no questions asked semi-truck contract. The pay was really good and the distances weren't long between trips. The manifest said organic waste. The delivery point was a facility outside of a town in rural Pennsylvania that didn't have a name on the highway exit. Just a green sign that read, Industrial Access. I've been driving haul for 12 years. I've hauled chemicals, livestock, and medical supplies. I knew what organic waste smelled like. This wasn't it. The facility was gray concrete and rusted steel. It had 10-foot walls, razor wire, thermal cameras mounted every 30 feet. The guards wore sterile white uniforms with no patches, no logos, and no names. The one at the gate scanned my ID with a device that looked more like hospital equipment than a warehouse scanner. He didn't say a word. He didn't even make eye contact. I backed into the loading bay. It was raining hard. I felt the trailer jolt as it hit the dock. I stepped out to check the seal. That's when I saw the crack. The jolt had split one of the older containers. A thick, grayish-brown sludge was leaking from the seam, mixing with rainwater on the concrete. The smell hit me before I could step back. It was metallic and sweet, like copper and rock wrapped together. I crouched down without thinking. The rain was washing away the top layer of the sludge, and underneath, catching the dock lights, I saw them. Pacemakers, dozens of them. Titanium hip joints, dental bridges with porcelain still attached, and between all of it, small jagged white fragments. Bone, ground down but not all the way. A guard materialized from the shadows. He had a black gas mask on. Without hesitation, he didn't even ask if I was okay. He didn't even look at the spill. He pointed one finger at my chest and said, "Get back in the cab." Lock the door. Do not get out until we tell you. I sat in that cab for 3 hours. Through the rain on my windshield, I watched other truckers arrive, all coming from the direction of the interstate, the same corridor that connects to 4 major city hospitals. The drivers never got out. Workers in white suits unloaded the containers with forklifts. They were fast, mechanical, and silent. Nobody looked at anyone else. That's when I realized what this place was. It wasn't a rendering plant. It was a disposal hub. When a surgery goes wrong, when a hospital has remains they can't legally report, they send them here. Everything gets ground down, bleached into sterile sludge, and bagged. The bags are labeled organic soil enhancer. After I quit that contract, I looked up the product. The fertilizer from the facility is distributed to garden centers in 37 states. I found the same brand in my neighbor's garage last spring. He was using it on his rose garden. His kids play in that dirt. I didn't tell him, and I really don't think I ever will. I was out in a small desert town near the Nevada border for a short-term irrigation project. It was the kind of place where the heat sits on your chest like a hand. Nothing moves during the day except the dust. My first night, I went to the only bar in town, a windowless place called the Iron Sight. The bartender was a heavy, silent man in his 50s. When he turned to grab a bottle, I saw it. A white, jagged scar. It looked like a map of a very violent night. The weird part wasn't the scars. It was that I recognized him. I couldn't place it exactly, but I knew I'd seen his face in the news segment. Years ago, something about a high-profile trial back east. I told myself I was crazy. People have lookalikes. But then again, it happened the next morning. I took my truck to a small shop to get the oil changed. The mechanic rolled out from under a sedan, and I saw a very specific tattoo on his forearm. 3 black bars with a line through them. I'd seen that same mark in a documentary about a gang that had been wiped out in a federal sting years ago. According to that doc, nobody survived. I started paying attention to the faces in town. The woman at the post office. The guy pumping gas. They all had this same guarded, heavy stillness. They didn't look like small-town people. They looked like people who were waiting for something bad to happen. None of them asked where I was from. In a town that small, people usually want to know your life story. These people didn't even want to know my name. They just looked at me and waited for me to leave. I was sitting in the diner on my 3rd day, staring at my coffee. I felt someone sit in the booth directly across from me. It was an old woman. She didn't have a menu. She just leaned in close. She smelled like stale cigarettes. "You're doing a lot of looking, son," she said. I tried to make a joke about the heat, but she didn't smile. She didn't even blink. People around here like their privacy. If you keep trying to place our faces, someone might decide you've seen enough. She got up and walked out. I looked around the room. 3 other men in the diner were staring at me. They weren't angry. They were just watching. I didn't finish my coffee. I went back to the motel, threw my bags in the truck, and I left. As I pulled onto the main road, a black SUV pulled out from behind a warehouse. It didn't tailgate me. It just stayed exactly 4 car lengths back. It followed me for 40 miles, through the desert, over the hills, all the way to the county line. The SUV pulled a U-turn in the middle of the highway and headed back toward the town. I checked my mirrors for the next 2 hours. When I got home, I looked up the town. It's on the map. It has a name. But when you look at the census data, the population hasn't changed in 15 years. Not by a single person. No births, no deaths. I searched for the news segment I remembered, but I couldn't find it. It was like it's been scrubbed from the internet. I don't take any more jobs in the desert. And I definitely don't look too closely at people's faces.